Welcome to Risk Roundup. As blockchain technology brings us the potential to democratize, decentralize, design, and define trust in the digital interconnectivity and infrastructure to build digital systems, communicating with the technology becomes essential. That brings us to a question. Is it possible to communicate with a technology in a human language? It seems there are some initiatives emerging that could make it possible to communicate with the blockchain technology. To discuss one such initiative further, I'm delighted to welcome Arnoud Berghuis, MSc, to Risk Roundup. Arnoud is the co-founder and the member of the board at Dutch Blockchain Association and Blockchain Knowledge Foundation, and he's based in Netherlands. Welcome, Arnoud. We're honored to have you on Risk Roundup.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome.
Wonderful, Arnold. So, if irrespective of whether we are looking for blockchain development or we are trying to define a smart contract or want to do a transaction using a smart contract, we need to depend on a language. What is the current state of blockchain languages, and do they suffice for the needs of the blockchain community?
Yes. Language, of course, we know many languages to program machines over many decades, and still there is a lot to improve. When people use technology, they always skip the user interface. And in this case, it's probably language to talk to machines without error and misunderstanding, because that is what we want. So we use, between humans, of course, language to transfer knowledge and trust. It's humans' most powerful tool. But when it comes to computers and systems and machine, we do not have such a powerful language. We all know when we use the remote control of a television or something like that, it's many buttons, but it doesn't really work. The television itself, it's a beautiful piece of technology, but the interface is quite lousy, to say so. Well, we try to improve this language using a translation function. So there are many ways to do all kind of computer languages and translation machines. We all know, for example, Google Translate. But we also know that Google Translate is not always correct. Sometimes there is a mistake in there.
Yes, I hear you on that. I mean, there needs to be a human interface, and we need a way to communicate with the technology. So, do we have a technology like that? Because since the blockchain, if we see blockchain is write only. So once everything is written on a blockchain, and if there is an error, we cannot change it. So
Exactly.
how do we change that, or how do we create a
This research, this was always there, especially, for example, in Europe, because we have many languages in Europe. So there were always people who wanted to translate, for example, French poetry into German poetry or into English using only mathematics. And of course, we know that's not that easy. But if you do the instructions for a machine or a blockchain, then it is easy, because like talking to a blockchain is something like talking to a dog. It's a very reduced instruction set. And then it's possible to make a function. You must imagine such a function this way. When I give you these two languages, for example, French and English, and I give you of these languages everything you need, the dictionary, the grammar book, the ontology, the semantics, and all these elements, and I ask you to make a function in between, a mathematical function that the translation is always correct. Well, if it comes to complete natural languages, it's not possible, but for the blockchain, this reduced instruction set to transfer trust based on compliance issues, then it's possible. So we proved that. And basically the background is that in the Netherlands there was more research on, for example, the language Python is from the Netherlands. It's also a very readable language, and it's also very favorite because it's very powerful. So we narrowed that language And we made it more readable because, yes, you must read it. Otherwise, you cannot verify what you want to write down. And
Sure.
exactly what you told, it's right only. So how to get rid of the errors?
Sure. So what you have developed is based on Python? Is that what you're telling?
It's the same kind of research. We are academic spin-off. And it's a similar kind of research that was done at the universities in Netherlands. There were a lot of more. This research was going on for many, many years and many, many decades, also in the rest of Northwest of Europe, as far as I know. But everyone thought it was an academic exercise.
Yes.
It was, what does it make sense to translate poetry, French poetry, into German poetry? You must be a little bit nuts to do that. You must be very systematic and analytic to do it. But it became very useful because now we have this blockchain and we need such a precise translation function.
So how would it work? I mean, there are so many blockchain projects going on that there is also
Yeah.
cryptocurrency market that is so popular, everywhere. So how would this something like this work? How would
It's
is
just
it?
an add-on on your on an editor, and it generates just the output code. For example, Solidity. So you write down your language in our language, and I could show you this language. Then you say, oh, that is the language I can read. Also, when you are not a programmer, and on the output side, there is this language we cannot read, but it's something like Java, or in this case Solidity. But you don't need to read it. Of course, you can give it to the experts, and they can tell you that it's correct code. And you can also, of course, let mathematicians check our compiler and they will tell that the compiler is complete, it works, it translates correct. So that this formula is something like 100 pages, and you can send it to, for example, a Dutch notary. We have these kind of digital notaries. You also have them in Switzerland, and they keep it secret, but they tell you the function works. You can also sit with me in front of the computer and insert a lot of code, and then at the end, when you change it a little bit, the different code comes out.
So let's talk about this. There is a blockchain functional, and there was an error in the smart contract. So how would your language go ahead and fix that? And how would we make sure that it is auditable, and that it has not done any other changes in the code, but just changing the error that was in there? How do we make sure of all those functionalities?
Yes. The process we have is a one-way process. We cannot translate any code into our language. We have this higher natural language, and it translates into code. And that code is error-free because it's based on a translation function. If you just have some programming code, we cannot digest the natural language out of that. That's impossible. Always when you have, for example, two coders and two programmers, and you ask them to check each other's code, then normally they have a hard time, and probably they start all over and then say, look, this is my code, and it's a little bit better than your code, so probably your code is wrong. This is probably the way they work.
Yes, I
So
hear you.
it's a one-way process. But another issue that you point is that our language has a mechanism inside the language layer to change the code. Because when we had the compiler, we saw we were generating many versions. It's very easy. You have this input code, change a few things, and then you have a different output. And it took a long time, something like even 2 years, to figure out how this mechanism works. Because, again, the blockchain is write only, so we need to have a mechanism to change and adapt this write only blockchain. the blockchain itself doesn't provide this mechanism, so it should be somewhere else. So
Yes.
we put this inside our language layer. There we have this change mechanism.
So when you say inside the language layer, is it something similar to the intelligence layer that we are putting on blockchains like AI? Would it work similarly?
Um, it is certainly a layer. It's not that kind of layer. It just generates a lot of code. This whole language forces you to program in a structured way, and it injects the mechanism to change. Just like, for example, it injects mechanisms for respecting privacy, like claim-based access control and self-sovereign identity. If you want to write an address or a personal data to a blockchain, we don't want that, of course. It should be a kind of a hash. So we are also working to enhance that, but we understand that the language itself, that interface, should take care of issues like a mechanism for change, a mechanism for privacy. Also, we have mechanisms that go around the errors inside Ethereum, because Ethereum just has known errors. So our compiler should not make those errors. It programs around it. So we just don't use these functions in Solidity because it's just buggy. Basically, the whole language is platform agnostic.
Yes.
So well, we generate Solidity, so you can also execute it on Hashgraph, Hedera, or some other Solidity-based blockchain, like, for example, a Quorum. It's a really better documented, but it's a private blockchain, of course.
Yes. Yeah. No, I hear you. I think there are tremendous benefits. I can see that. What stage are you in the development of this language?
Well, that's now you got me. The function is really working, but it's also language. It's never finished. So
Yes.
we seek strategic partners to better integrate with such a platform of GP Morgan and of like Quorum, or do more on the front end, on the back end, make specific functions that you just can call for certain sectors. When you do some kind of financial investment function then you would like to have the exact terminology, domain-specific issues, and then you can express yourself better.
Sure. Sure. No, I
And
mean, that's a lot.
the
You are
same
right.
for the health sector. It demands their own thing. So we seek strategic partners to develop those industry specific languages.
Yes, no, it's a long process. I hear you, and it would be a good idea to have those strategic partnerships. So a
Yeah.
lot of different testing can be done in many different ways. But I was thinking, because this is a language that is being developed separately, and it can help correct the errors on blockchain. It can also probably be used for identifying when the algorithms of any AI based algorithm is not functioning as it should be, or as it tries to do something else than what it was designed for. So do you think your language can also work with artificial intelligence
Yeah,
algorithm?
sure. They are like yin and yang. They're totally connected. They belong to that. I wrote a post on the concept of caged autonomy, because artificial intelligence is also really great. But the problem with artificial intelligence that you're never sure. It could make an error. It could be unreliable. So we suggest to make a cage of compliance rules around the artificial intelligence based machine. So it's like caging a dog. the dog is really a good animal, but sometimes it bites. That's why we put it in a cage or we put it on a leash. So everything that could behave in a way that that has some exceptions, you better cage. And blockchain is really good at that. So, for example, a self-driving car, oh, maybe it always does do its job okay, but even when it goes wrong once in 10 years, we don't accept it nowadays in our society, that planes come down, self-driving cars do something wrong. So I suggest to have this kind of grid of blockchain rules completely separate from this artificial intelligence around the machine. And it's fairly simple, just a lot of work. You have to write it down.
Yes,
And the language is really great. You could make a transport language that's really easily defines all these rules that are related to transport and traffic, because look, then you have to express yourself really well.
yes.
How it works. Huh?
Sure. No, is it going to be one-way communication or two-way? Like, if there is an error in blockchain, you can use this interface, this language that you have developed, and you can correct it. But what if there is something, like let's say for autonomous, weapons, or, smart cars, or even, cyber weapons, would there be a way that, this language will notify humans that an
Exactly.
attack is coming your way?
Exactly, because blockchain is the perfect, transparent command language, instruction language that can handle this huge amount of complexity. Because when it really comes to you, for example, warfare, it's all about preparation. All these drones and everything is moving, and by definition they want to create a kind of chaos. And how to process that? And of course there must be several layers of reaction in there, and there must be a feedback loop, otherwise you cannot not react. And basically they are triggers, and of course there is you are free to build all these levels, of course.
Yes.
And to intervene with humans. And of course, when something goes wrong, probably the first message is give him a call, involve the humans.
Yes, yes. So you see broad applications of this language, that it can be used in cyber warfare, it can be used in
Basically, yes,
in
because we talk about blockchain, but I talk most of the time about a language to talk to systems. A system is one time a blockchain system, and one of the most favorite, but it's just as well to robots, just as well to organization, but because an organization is just a system. It's made out of rules. The whole legal system is just a system.
yes,
And we need to have a digital language to talk to digital legal systems.
yes,
So we are digitalizing our world, and we need to have a digital way to express ourselves towards these machines. Just as we had a language between humans, we need to have it towards machines, systems, robots, artificial intelligence, and basically it's all the same. And of course, we call it blockchain language because that's now the hype. But
yes.
I figured it out. I was talking last week with a supplier of IoT, and basically we want to use the language for these industrial components, sensor-based component, because as a sensor language it was far more easier than blockchain. And then you could basically let customs talk to containers.
Yes.
And and
Yes.
transport, and they just only want to have these papers, and they want to measure something like the temperature. It was fairly simple, but they still needed to have a language, because otherwise you have to connect something, and you get this weird code out of it that normal people from the customs do not read.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, it seems from what you're telling me that it has broad implications, and the name that you have given, natural blockchain language, is probably misleading because it can be applied more than in blockchain. It can be applied in many other technologies. For in
Yes, yes. Look, we bring this broader paradigm, but we say, look, we have to talk to systems and machines in a natural way, because our society is developing. We are so enormously dependent on all this technology. We need to find a way to communicate in a proper manner without error and misunderstanding, with mechanisms to correct it, to respect, of course, a human and a human privacy. And it was a little bit underestimated over all this time. We never did invest a lot of money in computer languages, because a few decades ago, when you bought such a big IBM machine as big as a house, you got 20 programmers for free. So and now it's the other way around. Right? Now you buy a programmer for this amount, and he brings his laptop for nothing. But
yes,
still, it needs to have an efficient way to program the machine. And it's not only efficient, especially error-free. And this pops out with the blockchain because it's write-only. But we also have that with the Heartbleed error from Intel. So that was also a write-only environment. You program a chip and circuit, and then you cannot remove the error. So it happens more often. In a
yes,
society itself also. Our whole society, once we made our governments and our democracy, and we praised that into heaven. But of course, these were just systems we made 1 century ago, and they never changed.
yes,
So there also we need a mechanism for change. And I believe that blockchain combined with our change mechanism could give governments a new way to write down the rules in a digital way, including an easy way to adapt and change. So we bring a lot of mechanisms. It's a complete portfolio of new thinking based on language and change and
yes. I see
oh,
that.
yeah.
I do you know if anybody else is developing any language that could do the
There are
same?
some groups around the world that also like to do it. There is a group based on the language called Haskell, and most academics try to translate Haskell into natural language, but then that's a very machine-like language, and then the gap is too big between the natural language and this machine language. So I think they say themselves that they need another decade. So that is really an academic exercise. We took this more Python pragmatic approach, and of course we are not that precise as the Haskell language, because that's beautiful precise, but we do not always need that precision. The banking industry and especially they push towards this Haskell way of programming, because they want to program the financial markets, and that is all about milliseconds and great precision. But if you do something like e-health or shipping a container around the world, you don't need all that precision, and you can very well work with our language.
I mean,
So
precision would be good, but not in all circumstances. So maybe, as you develop this language further, you may be able to incorporate that. But what other, I mean, in how many industries have you tested? For how many different projects you have tested this language? And
we have done a dozen of projects, and we just have as output code, and you can just check that code, and I can send you such code, and it can send you the input code. You say, oh, that's beautiful code. That's and if you test it longer, you say, okay, that's error free. And yes, it's not that we work in specific industries that much, because we solve compliance and certification in issues, digital values across all industries. So we are there from the military till the till the government itself.
I think my question should have been how many technologies you have tested with more than industries, because that's
Yeah.
what we have to be focused on, like whether we can control or whether we can communicate in an effective manner with autonomous systems, or if we can effectively communicate with gene editing tools and blockchain and all these different technologies that are emerging. So that
That is always, we are never finished. I know, for example, that is something very interesting. If you link it to this biotechnology, we haven't done anything there, for example, but it would be great. So it works really simple. If we have a partner who feels a fit with this and they want to do it, we like to share our code, because we believe in the near future, something like 2 years or 3 years from now, it will be open source. We don't do it at this moment. It doesn't make sense to share our code, because then Google rewraps it and they put it on their server. But if you use it from Google, you always have to click this button that you agree that they have your intellectual property. And we all know what happened with our intellectual property last decade. If we do it now, we don't lose our privacy, but basically our business procedures, because the data is out there and they can optimize that. They basically have a live X-ray picture of your business and see there is the profit to make. This is even the procedure. So that would be a disaster. It's about digital sovereignty. So we believe that language is something of the people. So we like to integrate within society. And for example, I was on Malta. And in Malta, they have now the third and the fourth blockchain law, and that recognizes our language. And they have two articles. The first is that they say that we recognize natural blockchain language based on pure mathematics, and they also tell that the court should recognize pure logic. That sounds very logic, but it's really revolutionary, because in the past, if you go with pure logic to a court, pure mathematics, the judge just kicks you out and say, look, I don't understand this logic. But it is really important that the courts start to accept talking to machines.
yes, that is a big development.
It's basically the story of Aristotle,
Yes.
the philosopher that basically was he wrote down everything about logic you have to know. But people really didn't like him, and it cost him his life, that he was talking logic to everyone all the time, and it was very annoying for people. And but we have to rethink that, because we have now all these computers, and we can now talk to machines. We can now talk to each other using a lot of mathematics that we only have to check once. And that makes that we can build a lot more advanced and complex systems, legal systems, and interfaces, of course.
Yes,
So
yes,
this could happen this year already in Malta,
yes,
and because it's now draft legislation, and that would be really great, because Malta is part of the European Union, and then all European courts must accept that. That's a little bit our trick.
oh,
And then of course everyone start to think, and of course now already everyone start to think all over the world. Do courts have to accept logic? Do they have to accept it? Do we need to have a mechanism that judges could read machine code or programmers code that would be readable, that they could verify? So they
Yes,
have nothing to object against it as long as they can read it, then they can verify it. So that's
yes.
our main stance. Huh? That we say we make readable code for accountants and lawyers that they can read, because otherwise what you cannot read, you cannot verify.
Yes. Yes, no,
So,
that is a good development. And I was just thinking that recently I wrote my vision about how can we develop collective intelligence using humans and machines and matter and the Mother Nature. If we are,
oh, I love to, yeah.
you should read that paper. It's on our website, Risk Group LLC.
Oh, I will do, and I will comment, because it's exactly like Aristotle. It was all about knowledge and knowledge society, or how to transfer knowledge and trust using mathematics. It was his life, and we can now take him. We can rethink that, and basically, we believe it's doable,
It is
and
good.
that's also why I believe language cannot not be owned and need to be transferred. So
Yes,
we really seek strategic partners to share the code and stay ahead together,
yes,
because it's language, and we must own our own language to talk to these machines. If we give it away to someone else, and then you really lose your sovereignty and also your power. You can also not talk all day to someone else using a translator.
yes.
It works a little bit, but
Yeah,
not really.
I'm sure there is still a lot that needs to be figured out. So, where do you see the problems? What problems you feel that you need to overcome for this language to be used universally and for the benefit
No,
of?
basically we need now at this moment we need to get this group up speed, and that is not going that fast. So of course we could basically make it open source, but I believe it will be directly killed and taken offline by the large industrials. They already do now. Basically, everyone working in the field is working already for Google, and they're totally silent about this. But they are very hard working to get a kind of mathematical translation function. And many other groups are also there, but no one still has it working. They are not always that pragmatic, but it will happen. And then, well, we also like to stay ahead, of course, because we believe it's for the
Yeah,
from and for people. And
I hear you. I hear you.
I think it at the end it people will recognize it, and also even when Google would put it online, and then directly everyone start to rethink what's happening, because then you know that you lose your procedures because people read these agreements, but then years are lost. So we suggest to companies and to have this kind of technology in house. Did you just have your own compiler, and then you can control your own procedures. You can do it all yourself, and the same for governments and like we offer to Malta.
Yes. So, what would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners?
Well, I hope you are very enthusiastic about this language layer on top of blockchain. I also hope that you see it as a solution. We see that making blockchains is not that easy. We see the whole round of ICOs are going down, and there are not many blockchains really working. So something is wrong. Now, well, it's like building a car. A car is really great, but it's not an engine on four wheels. We also need a gearbox. We even need screen wipers, and we need all this kind of technology that you add to it. So we come with language, and we like to have enthusiastic people, and we are totally open. We are a foundation, and we like to stay ahead.
Yes.
And and we like to do that together. So if you can keep a secret for a year or one or two, then we like to share our code and together invest in that and make, for example, a version for your country, like on Malta, or for your industry, um, and that's basically the model we have.
Yes, no, absolutely. No, that is a good work that you all are doing. So thank you so much, Arnold, for participating in this roundup today. We appreciate your thoughtful insight on natural blockchain language and its potential applications. And I'm sure our global viewers and listeners would benefit tremendously from the information you shared on the benefits of natural blockchain language and its application. So even if a single individual or entity is able to benefit from the discussion we had today, this risk roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I will read your paper and come back to it. Okay.
Wonderful. So, Risk Roundup, a global initiative launched by Risk Group, is a security risk reporting for risk emerging from existing and emerging technologies, technology convergence and transformation happening across cyberspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. And it is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security. So, if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the risk roundups, to watch the risk roundup webcast or listen to the risk roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayshree, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.